I would like to talk to you about archaeology this morning, but I need to start with a confession, which is that, as always, Hollywood has lied to you. If you're expecting Harrison Ford to exist in this presentation beyond this slide, then you're going to be sorely mistaken. What we're actually talking about is sitting in a muddy ditch for 3 hours in the rain wearing a high-vis jacket. It's not glamorous, sorry. I'm going to try and convince you that the best person to delete old stuff is you, and the best time to do it is right now. The reason for that is that time is a real problem for engineers. The longer time goes on after something has been abandoned, the worse we feel about having to figure out why it existed in the first place or if it's still used. I'm going to show you an example. As always, this is not to blame or shame the people or teams who have done this. We've all done this kind of thing. I have done this before as well. We're going to jump into our infrastructure production AWS account, which sounds important, right? Like it's got a lot of our production stuff in it. And we're going to look at this S3 bucket called Fastly Log Forward. And Fastly is important, right? It keeps our websites working. It's a really critical piece of infrastructure. This bucket has 70 gigs of stuff in it and like 35,000 files. It sounds really important. If you're old, like me, then you probably remember needing a giant stack of iPods to store 70 gigabytes of data. This is a lot of stuff that's in here. Let's have a look at what's in the bucket. Oh, it's a bunch of log files from 2016. It's 70 gigs of log files from 2016. Are they there because they've been forgotten about, or are they there because something really important happened in 2016? I don't know. This was years before I started working here. I've deleted these files now, so if someone comes up to me after the talk and tells me that they're actually really important, then I might be a little bit sick, so probably don't. Let's talk money. This bucket costs us about £1.20 a month to host in AWS, which is not an amount of money that is keeping John Redding up at night. If you go to tech leadership and tell them that you've saved £1.20, they might congratulate you because they're nice people. But on the scale of the FT, you have not made a meaningful difference in the budget, sorry. But I think this gets interesting when we think about it in terms of engineering cost. At the FT, we have this idea of, for our internal billing, we have this idea of the average cost of an engineer, which ends up being about £300 a day, depending on geography and some other things, which is about £40 an hour. Which means that we can't compare these two things. A month of hosting this bucket is about 3 minutes of engineering time. So if you spend 10 minutes trying to figure out if you can delete this bucket, you might as well have just left it there for a quarter. And this happens because people are naturally bad at tidying up after themselves. Everyone is. But what do we do about it? I think there's only two things we can do, and I think they're both terrible. We can either spend hundreds of pounds of engineering time to tidy up this really small cost of infrastructure, or we can just leave it there and say that it's the cost of doing business. I can't advocate for either of these things. I think they're both bad options. You might also think that we could maybe do something with automation. Automation is a way of saving money, but that still relies on a lot of engineering effort to put that automation together. So I'm not optimistic about what we can do about this stuff that exists already. I'm sorry. I do have some suggestions for what we should do going forwards. I think the first thing is, I think that we should be aggressive with deleting stuff, old stuff that exists already. I'm not saying we should be reckless. I still think you should do a bit of research, but I think if you come across something like this, you should look for how it's documented, check BizOps, check tags or notes or things. But if you're quite sure it's not used, don't just close the tab and leave it for the next person to come across in 6 months' time to do exactly the same thing. Go ahead, delete it. If you cause an incident deleting something that's not documented, I think that's okay. And the second thing is, for everything that you create, I want you to think about what the end of its life is. This isn't just an engineering problem. This is a product problem as well. If you're not getting this stuff from your product manager, then sit down with them, talk about these rules. It doesn't matter what kind of data it is. It could be log files, metrics, audit traces, photos of cats that FT subscribers have uploaded to try and win a competition. Like whatever editorial are doing, whatever kind of data we're storing, we've got to think about what the end game is for it. Where does it go eventually? Thanks.